Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal.
If you've ever wondered what it really takes to move from surviving to thriving, this episode is for you. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who've walked through the fire, and instead of burning, they learn to grow. Today, I am bringing you my favorite parts of my last three shows. And it was two people because one of the people that I interviewed, it was so good that I broke it into two parts, but it left me changed. And I think they'll do the same for you. So, first up is Carla Calderas. She's a therapist, coach, retreat leader, and a brand new author of Healing is Within You. At just 14 years old, Carla was facing poverty, abuse, and loneliness. But she made one bold decision that changed everything. Her past wasn't going to define her, and she was going to help others. That moment of courage became the foundation for a life built on helping others heal. From her days as a teacher and counselor to running her own practice and self-care center, Carla helps women move beyond survival and finally come home to themselves. And then there is Shalev, or Lev, as we like to call him, Amar. He's a top attorney turned trauma recovery expert whose story absolutely blew me away. You have to hear it. Lev's grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and that pain didn't stop with that one generation. It rippled through his family for decades. And on top of that, being separated from his mother as a child, it left wounds that shaped his entire emotional world. But instead of staying stuck in that pain, Lev spent 9+ years researching and testing trauma healing methods that you would maybe call crazy until he discovered what truly works. And he built a marriage filled with peace, laughter, and love. So both Carla and Lev prove that healing isn't luck. It's a process of understanding what's really happening beneath the surface and meeting it with compassion instead of control. So stay with me until the very end because I'll be sharing my real deal takeaways, the biggest lessons from both of their journeys that you can start using today to create more peace, safety, and connection in your life. This isn't just a recap. It's a reminder that no matter how heavy your past feels, healing is possible, hope is real, and your story isn't over yet. So let's get into these interviews.
Okay,
That's so amazing. And it is called Healing is Within You.
I have it right here. Healing is
Oh,
within.
there you go. It's such an accomplishment. And
Thank you.
so it includes both blends your personal story with your professional expertise.
Correct. Yes. So it
So
includes
tell me
everything I've
what
learned.
inspired you? What inspired you with this book?
Okay, so I thought about writing a book when I was in college. I
Okay.
would add a few things here and there, but I struggled with, do I want it to be like a story, like a lot of Ogmandino's books, like The
Hmm.
Greatest Homes in the World? Like he tells a story.
Yes.
So I was like, do I tell stories or do I just tell people these are the steps, these are the skills, these are the things you need to do? So I always struggle with that balance. So I got to an outline in a page and a half, and it sat there for many, many years. And this was in college, so this was like 2010, 2009.
Okay.
So then 2023 comes. I
2023.
yeah,
Okay.
go to Summit of Greatness with Lewis.
Oh,
We go there.
yes.
Yeah. And he is
Okay.
asking questions like, raise your hand if you've waited 5 years to do something. And of course, I'm raising my hand, 10
I
years
got
to
the
do something. And by this
chapter.
point in time, it was more than 10 years. So I'm raising my hand, and then he's just talking about it. And then I feel like everything just aligned. Him
Yeah.
asking that question, him working with story builders who help him with his
Yes.
book. So then story builders were there doing workshops and then having a table for people who had questions. I spoke with them and I signed up with them to help me with the book. So
Too.
that's what got me to complete the book.
And you brought your story in
Yes,
to
so it's
it.
a combination of
Yeah.
it is a combination of stories and tools. The
Yes.
way I decided to do it is I created three avatars.
Okay.
So Victoria, Nance,
Okay.
and Gabby. So what I try to do with these avatars is thinking about the problems or the issues that I see the most. So
Mm.
to me, Nancy represents anxiety, women who are very
Yeah.
anxious. Gabby represents depression, just
Okay.
because sometimes we adjust and we change, but maybe they both had the same trauma, but their reaction and their patterns look different. And
Yes.
Victoria is somebody who also had trauma and pain, but she learned to close herself off. So she's attached. She looks like the bad babe, businesswoman, but
Yes.
also struggling and with no relationships. So I use those three avatars to tell us stories, to give examples with the tools I'm talking about. And then I incorporate a few of my own stories and traumas if they are relevant to what we're talking about. So
Oh, I
it's not my
love
whole life
that.
story, it's not an autobiography. It just to me is about helping people heal and letting them know that healing is within them. They can do it. And then I'm just using the avatars in my stories
Yeah.
to make points.
I would love to touch on all three.
Okay.
If we
Yes.
Okay, anxiety. I just feel, do you feel like, I don't know, in the last few years, the anxiety level,
Yeah.
because I have a teenager, well, two teenagers. My little guy just turned
Goodness.
13. I know. And then, but I just feel this anxiety in our society today is at an all-time high. What are your thoughts on anxiety?
Yes, so anxiety, yeah, I've seen an increase since COVID. After that,
Yeah.
we started seeing anxiety in like little kids and young kids.
Little.
So it really
Yeah.
affected our society. So with anxiety, the way I explain it to clients is anxiety is thinking a lot about the future and being worried about it. And many times it's being worried about things that we cannot control,
Yeah.
like the
And you
political,
can't turn it off,
right? Is those
right? Like it's
constant
just, you
thoughts on
can't turn it off because it's normal to have thoughts about the future and it's normal to have thoughts that worry you.
Mhm.
But you can usually, move on or talk yourself through it. I just feel like anxiety is like this, you can't turn off those thoughts. They just consume you.
Right. And it goes from like one simple thing to catastrophizing and like, oh
Yes.
my gosh, I'm gonna die.
Yes, yes. And I don't know, but I feel like social media also hasn't really helped,
Right.
at least the younger kids.
Right.
I feel like it's a hard thing.
It's
So,
yeah, it's a
what
trap.
would you say? What helps the most for anxiety, would you say?
Um, Mindfulness.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, mindfulness is the word that comes to mind because, like we said, is anxiety is thinking about the future, having these thoughts on repeat. So, learning mindfulness is I'm gonna come back to the present moment. I know I have these
Yeah.
worries, these thoughts, but right now I am here. I'm going to focus on drinking my water, on writing the
Mm.
things I'm grateful for right now, is reminding yourself to come back to the present moment. So,
Yeah.
mindfulness.
I think you're right. And I'll just taking a break from social, right? Just all those things, the things that will contribute,
Right.
taking little breaks. Oh, okay. I love that. And then depression. What do you define as depression?
Depression to me is having long periods of sadness mixed with guilt, mixed with shame, mixed with feeling like you're the only one struggling through that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
would you just say a blah, like a lack of wanting to a lack of joy with life, would you
Um,
say? Or how would you say?
yeah, for sure. I feel like all of the
Hmm.
things that are depression cause lack of motivation,
Yes.
disconnection, wanting to be by yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say is the biggest thing for depression that can help?
Mhm. Connection. Connection, and I explain that in
Yes.
different ways. Um,
Yeah.
Connecting to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
let me look at myself and all my accomplishments, all the things I've survived, all the things that I've been through, and how I'm still here. I still made it out. So, connection with themselves, connection with their families. Sometimes they withdraw, they want to be alone, they don't reach out, they just want to be left alone. So, it's can I connect with my immediate family, friends that I haven't talked to in a while? Or connecting with nature. Sometimes they're so overwhelmed and so it's too much stimulation to connect and they have a lot of unhealthy thoughts playing through their minds. So maybe let's start with connecting with nature. Can you get a dog? Can you go on nature walks daily? But
Mm.
connection either to nature, to themselves, to family, to friends, or making new connections if needed.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Okay, and then when the third one was
Victoria,
the
yes.
Victoria,
Close
the
stuff.
close off. I'm like, how did you say it? Yeah. Has closed off one.
Yes.
Describe
So,
that.
yeah. So Victoria has a lot of trauma, a lot of sexual trauma. And her mom never connected with her. So, to
Okay.
avoid more pain throughout her life, she learned to not build any deep relationships. She learned to be standoffish. I'm just going to focus on material things and being a badass and having the Mercedes, having the big apartment, having the jewelry, the purses, the shoes, all of that because it was too painful to build relationships. She didn't want to get hurt again. So then all her focus became on financial status, making more money, buying more things.
Do you feel like it's also having an outward appearance of being fine?
Right? For sure. Yes. So it's like I'm perfectly fine. Look, I'm driving this car. I have the newest purse and newest shoes. So I must be okay.
I
So it's like
must be
building
okay.
this mask and this shield that my life is perfect. I have it all together, but inside I'm dying and I feel inadequate and I don't feel good enough and I feel like I don't belong.
And what would be the step for that poor person? Just kidding. But I mean, really, like, oh, how do you start breaking down those walls? What would it?
Right. Yes.
Mm,
So what I have encountered in clients who are like that,
uh-huh.
like the biggest thing is self-love and self-forgiveness.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So of course
Yes.
they can get the relationships or work on the connection,
Connection,
out on
the
mindfulness.
be
Of course,
present.
that's
Hmm.
beneficial, but
Yeah.
the deepest thing is gonna be self-love because sometimes at the core they blame themselves. They think in this case for Victoria, like maybe I wasn't good enough. That's why my mom never loved me. Maybe I deserved to be raped. Maybe I deserve all that pain. So it's a lot of self-forgiveness and self-love.
Yeah, I've even seen it like even when they start to realize that it wasn't their fault, then
Right.
they start going down this path of, well, why did they choose me?
Yeah. Right.
Which is just so heartbreaking.
Mm, right.
Oh, okay. Well, I love those. That is so amazing. And in the book, I think you talk a lot about learning from the past with compassion.
Right. Yes.
Tell me about that.
Hmm. What I see is that many times with a difficult past,
Yeah.
we want to forget it. We don't
Yep.
want to think about it. We just want to pretend it's not there and move on. And nothing is going to get better unless we look at it, we open that box, we go through everything and are able to release it and look at it with compassion. So what that looks like is forgiving yourself for anything that happened, building the empathy and the compassion that people have their own journey. So not taking it personally. I give some examples with my mom, for example, that she was very hard on me, and I feel like I always had to do more. So learning to reframe the past to, like, in her own way, my mom was telling me, like, I know you're capable of more. I know you can do more. So it's like changing that story for something that feels good and feels empowering instead of feeling like a victim. Yeah,
Yeah, I just feel like so many people are so hard on themselves,
right.
and have just no compassion for themselves and what they've been through. So for someone who's stuck in those in one of those avatars or others that we've discussed, because there are definitely others,
Right.
what's the one truth you want them to hold on to?
I want them to know that they are capable of healing. It is going to be a journey, but they're capable of it. They are strong, and that they are already whole. They already have that peace, that serenity, that light inside of them. So it's not about what else can I add to my life? What else can I have? What else can I build? But maybe what layers can I keep shedding to go back to my true, beautiful, amazing, full of light, full of joy self.
I love that.
Yes.
Okay, one final question. So, if healing is within us,
Mhm.
how can we begin to trust ourselves again when life has felt heavy, really heavy for so long?
Yes. It is a probably lifelong journey. So being patient and starting small. So what starting small looks like to me is, if I say I'm going to drink more water today, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna trust myself to do it. I'm going to cheer myself on to drink that extra glass of water. Because how am I going to think about trusting myself, trusting my intuition, if when it comes to the simple details and the simple things, you don't trust yourself? So start small, start where you're at. Maybe it is, I'm going to say, I'm going to incorporate more fruits and vegetables into my diet. So go ahead and do that. Maybe it is, I'm going to have that uncomfortable conversation that I've been avoiding for years. Trust yourself that you're strong enough to have that conversation and you're worthy of having that conversation. So I'm going to call that friend and say, hey, I actually stopped talking to you because I felt hurt because you said this 2 years ago. So, whatever you say you're going to do it because you're deserving and worthy. And it's just going to help you build that self love, self esteem, and help you heal.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's a really simple, right? I mean, it's a simple thing that you can start doing,
Right.
that you could start doing today to bring you out of that heaviness and start connecting with yourself,
Right.
right? And cheering yourself on for
Right. Yes.
success.
We don't do that enough.
You're
We
like,
don't
I did the
celebrate.
water. I
Right.
did
Yes.
it.
For sure.
Oh, thank you so much for today. If there was one other thing that you knew you wanted to get to this audience today before we got on this call, what would that be?
It'll be, I'm going to speak to the audience.
Yes.
You're beautiful. You are amazing. So you don't have anything to prove. You don't have to do anything. You just have to look at yourself and celebrate how far you have come and know that healing is already within you. It's already taking place. And it's about just reminding yourself and redirecting yourself to choose peace and choose joy.
Hitting bottom. I was in a very dysfunctional relationship, which triggered a lot of my childhood trauma. And, the first year was good. The last 3 years were varying degrees of hell. A lot of
Mm.
disrespect, a lot of arguing, yelling, belittling. being humiliated in front of family and friends, and tried really hard to make it work. When I first met her, I thought we'd get married, and it was amazing at first. Now I realize there was a lot of love bombing and idealization and halo effect type stuff. But in any event, after the first year, and there were some red flags, which of course I disregarded, but after the first year, it just got really bad. And I grew up with a father who had a severe case of BPD. He was traumatized. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor and a raging alcoholic. And my dad has since passed away. I don't want to bash my father. Hurt people hurt people. He had a good heart. He just could not deal with his anger and trauma issues. And my mom called him a rageaholic. He's basically like a dry drunk. He had all of the characteristics of a raging alcoholic without actually drinking, because he modeled the behaviors that he grew up with. Um, my father taught me work ethic, integrity, honesty. He was a good person, but that's the sinister thing about trauma is it can cause even good people to sometimes do terrible things to the people they care about and love the most. So, anyways, long story short, because I tend to go on tangents. So we broke up several times the last year of the relationship, and then finally I just realized that there's no way it was going to work because it would be better for a couple of weeks and I would go back to the same patterns. And so we had a final breakup, and I took breakups really, really hard because it triggered my deepest emotional wounding. For a long time, I thought it was my father's emotionally abusive behavior, but I had an even deeper emotional wound, which was an abandonment issue caused by being taken away from my parents at a year old. And I was brought up in what they call children's houses. It was in, I, just to give a little bit of context, I was brought up in what's called a kibbutz. It's basically kind of like a farming commune in Israel. And so they had weird social experiments. And one of those was taking the kids away from the parents at a year old. It was to help the parents be able to sleep through the night and to work more and have lives. And they thought that it would build community cohesion. It was just a small village of like 300 people. And so they wanted the kids to be like siblings. And it did cause that effect, but they didn't understand anything about attachment. And so obviously taking a baby, an infant, away from their parents at a year old had major deleterious effects. It's basically like the same as kids who grow up in orphanages. And so my earliest memory is I don't know how old I was, maybe 2 or 3 years old, but I woke up in the middle of the night in one of the children's houses, and the parents would rotate watching us, but they would fall asleep because it's the middle of the night. So I'd wake up, freak out, try to get home. And apparently it was a big problem. Like I only have one memory, but apparently it happened dozens of times that I would, in the middle of the night, be walking through the village crying, trying to get home. And that was a deep, deep-seated trauma. So breakups would trigger that abandonment wound for me. So it was just horrible. I'd have difficulty breathing all day, panic attacks, um, insomnia, wake up in puddles of sweat. I mean, it was brutal. And at the time, I would think it was like, well, it's because I'm so in love and I don't want to lose this person. And it wasn't that. It was just triggering my deepest emotional wounding and trauma. That's why I was having that horrible reaction. So hitting that bottom, I just got to an enough is enough point. I said I just couldn't keep living this way anymore. And I just realized that, I had to kind of go on that hero's journey that I'd been resisting for many years, to heal.
Oh, love. Wow. That's a lot. Yeah. And so you hit this rock bottom in your relationship, and we may come back to, what some of those red red flags were, but I'm sure that having some of your abandonment issues led you to stay in relationships that
Oh,
weren't serving you as well. But did you know at that time, at that rock bottom, that it might be the way that you grew up that you needed to heal? Or did you just know I need to do something different?
I didn't know. That's the thing. When you go on the healing path, you figure out things over time. It's kind of like peeling layers of the onion because when I started on the healing path, I worked really hard on um, processing and releasing the trauma related to my father. And I was able to successfully do that. I was even able to forgive. Um, but then there was still just this deep anxiety and uneasiness. And I was like, where's this coming from? And that's when, through the process of doing the work, I realized, oh, wow, it was this other thing. Because,
Yeah.
part of my journey was I realized that okay, I know how to be a lawyer. I'm smart. I understand politics well and world events and history but as far as relationships and psychology and emotional health, you know,
Not so much, huh?
no, but like there I was very deficient in my knowledge. So I was just like, okay, I got to put my ego and pride to the side and let's just learn something. I grew up in a dysfunctional environment. My parents they fought like cats and dogs. Um, my dad was actually even worse to my mom than he was to me. He would just fly off into rage attacks against her, even in family events. That gave me major social anxiety because it was always like, okay, what's going to cause my dad to flip out on my mom in front of everybody? And it was super embarrassing.
Yeah.
I remember,
Events are bad. Events are
yeah,
bad, right? Yeah.
and, and that's one of the reasons why I think um, men in particular, like you got to go on the healing journey. You don't want to bleed on people who didn't cut you. And not just that, you're damaging your children if you have children. It's not about just damaging your romantic relationship. But because my dad would yell at my mom at family dinners or social functions, and I remember people would like look at my sister and I, and we just basically wanted to crawl under the table. We were just so embarrassed and humiliated. Um, but yeah, in going through that journey, I did realize that there were multiple sources of trauma. And trauma is complicated. I think the common misconception out there is you're only traumatized if there's like a huge traumatic event, like you witness your best friend being blown up in a war, or you're assaulted, or you're robbed or at gunpoint or something like that. That's one source of trauma, but the majority of trauma is actually more complex. Um, there's regular. I mean, the symptoms are similar, but there's typical PTSD from again being in a war or being a policeman who sees horrible things like murders or even God forbid as being raped or something like that. But there's also complex PTSD. That's more from and I believe there's more. I haven't done a double-blind placebo-controlled study, but I believe there's more complex PTSD out there than people realize, and that's more from wounding in childhood. It could be emotional abuse, neglect, physical abuse, molestation that's repeated over time. And I would say the main distinction between regular PTSD and complex PTSD, although the symptoms are very similar, um, as far as high levels of anxiety, difficult breathing, panic attacks, emotional outbursts, stuff like that. But I would say with complex PTSD, there's also a higher level of emotional dysregulation.
Yes.
You feel like you have a crazy clown car in your brain and you just cannot control your emotions at all, which is an additional like difficult aspect of it.
Yeah.
and a lot of triggering and things like that.
It's interesting that you say that because I think just even just I call it like a chaotic home. Growing up in a chaotic home,
Yeah.
right? Can be can be very can cause those CPTSD symptoms. And then I just had an interview with someone where they fostered brand new babies from the
Mm.
NICU. They fostered, and the it starts even in the womb.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's one of the things that
yeah.
I've learned about trauma and that other people don't realize. I think oftentimes you can have somebody in adulthood who has severe anxiety, or depression, and anxiety and depression tend to be interrelated. It's like cycles of anxiety and depression, and you go back and forth between being anxious and depressed, or you're anxious and depressed at the same time, ironically.
Hmm.
But yeah, it can even start in utero.
Yeah.
In my situation, my parents were fighting when I was in utero. So my mom was extremely stressed out, and that affected me. Traumatic birth can
Yep.
traumatize. My mom went through a nearly 48-hour labor. And so the whole time I was stuck in the birth canal, I'm getting flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, which can lead to your nervous system being overactive from a very young age and
Yeah.
hypersensitive. Um, then they also took me away from my mom after I was born, I think for like 24 hours. So like nobody held me or anything. And again, that's something where you don't remember it, but your subconscious remembers it, and it
Yes.
causes like this deep unease and just feeling of being totally ungrounded and unmoored.
Yeah. So did you start so when you hit rock bottom, you did you start studying trauma like as deeply as you did law? Did you start there? Or what were your first steps towards
Well,
doing a different
ironically, I
thing?
didn't even start with the trauma stuff. I wanted to understand relationships better,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
because I just didn't ever want to go through that type of situation again. Like I said, it was hell. And and so it was in studying relationships, I started to then find out about trauma, and then I started studying psychology as well. I went to numerous seminars and workshops, and I did start to see a pattern. Oh wow, a lot of this is related to your childhood and your past painful experiences. Trauma is basically an unhealed emotional wound. It's like a psychic wounding. And so it's and time doesn't heal wounds. It just doesn't. Not deep wounds. Minor stuff, yeah, but not deep emotional wounding, especially if it's repeated. What you have to do is process and release. And it took me a long time to figure it out. You can't, awareness is important. It's a foundational element of healing, but awareness in and of itself is not enough because emotions are more powerful than logic. That's how we're designed, and it's to survive. And the issue is, so basically with trauma, you're basically trapped in fight, flight, or freeze. And especially as a young child, you might have to be on guard not to set the parent off, to kind of be walking on eggshells. And that's what you needed to survive at the time, but it's maladaptive in adulthood. And so you're basically trapped in that cycle of fight, flight, or freeze. And really, the only way to get out of that cycle is to process the emotional wounding that's causing that. I like to use metaphors because that really
Mm.
helps people understand things better.
Mm.
And so the way I look at trauma is, imagine you had like a big thorn stuck in your arm. Now, the way that unfortunately society has dealt with trauma is, okay, put some numbing cream on it, or think positive about the thorn being in there. Try and distract yourself. No amount of numbing cream, no amount of medication will ever get rid of the throbbing from the thorn. The only thing that will stop the throbbing is to pull the thorn out completely, but it hurts to pull it out. And that's why, unfortunately, a lot of people stay trapped in trauma their entire lives because they don't want to face it. The only way out is through. You can't distract yourself from this problem. You have to pull out the thorn. Ironically, by pulling out the thorn, it's more painful to pull it out in the short term, but in the long term, that's what you need to do to heal.
Banging your head against the wall trying to navigate the complexities of a relationship impacted by childhood trauma? It doesn't have to be this daunting. When you're married to a partner with unresolved childhood trauma, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what will set them off. No matter what you try, it feels like there's always something triggering another emotional response that seems completely out of context. And the harder you try to fix it, the more discouraged you feel. So what's the issue here? Navigating marriage with a trauma survivor is different. The love languages don't work. Date nights don't work. Self-help books don't help. But here's the good news. I've created something that does work. Something built from years of hard-earned lessons and real-life experience. Ready to take the first step toward real change? Let's talk. I'm offering a free one-on-one call where we'll dive into what's going on in your relationship and figure out a way forward together. This isn't just another quick chat. It's a chance to finally be heard, to share what you're going through with someone who truly gets it. No judgment, just real support. So if you're ready to start making sense of it all and find a little more peace in your marriage, book your free call now. Your happiness, your peace, and your relationship are worth it. Let's do it together.
You reach a certain point where, again, knowledge is valuable. I'm not going to say that it isn't. But when it comes to trauma, it gets to a point where you have to actually take action to process and release it. And I realized that although understanding was helpful, I still had that emotional pain internally. So I had to do things to process and release it. And it was just through a process of trial and error and iteration, going to lots of, like I said, lots of seminars. I also watched, gosh, thousands of hours of YouTube videos and podcasts. And I was able to just start to piece things together.
Okay.
And then I just realized, okay, that's what's missing. I need to actually process and release this stuff. Like I understand the source, I understand the effects, and now I have to like go through the work of like physically getting this out of my body. And so I just started to try different processes, uh, different treatments, different healing methods. And again, a lot of trial and error involved. But I did find things that worked eventually.
Did you do talk therapy? Did you talk it out?
I did.
Okay. That was
I
one
did
of them.
I did talk therapy, I did
Uh-huh.
EMDR,
Okay.
but again, talk therapy or life coaching or spiritual counseling, all wonderful guidance and helpful. It helps you stay on the path. My belief is that alone for deep-seated trauma, for extreme trauma, for PTSD will never work alone. You also have to do the trauma processing and release. So let's get into some of that.
Yes.
I read a book called The Revolutionary Trauma Release Process. And in that book, it's by Dr. David Berceli. He's a great guy. He would actually be a great guest. What he came up with was exercises that fatigue the psoas muscles and cause your body to shake. And so if you see, for example, somebody getting right after a car accident, they'll kind of be shaking.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's your body's natural way of releasing emotional pain and trauma energy. If you see ducks get in a fight, afterwards, like the ducks are shaking. Animals even do it. And
Yeah.
so, what these exercises do is they fatigue the psoas muscles because your psoas muscles hold a lot of trauma and also the fascia in your body. And so, once you do these exercises and fatigue your psoas muscles, you start shaking. And oftentimes, when we have bad, painful things happen to us, we don't do the shaking, we suppress it.
Yeah.
But these exercises are to induce the shaking. And so you start to get that emotional release. You start to release the trauma that's in your body and nervous system and mind. And by the way, that's the other thing people don't understand about trauma. Trauma affects your brain, causes you the wiring of your brain, certain parts of your brain to be overactive or underactive. The overactive is fight or flight. The underactive is dissociation. It causes you to have an enlarged amygdala. It can even be enlarged by 20%. The amygdala is the emotional part of your brain, and that's what makes you more emotional and more emotionally dysregulated. But trauma can also be stored in your body and nervous system. And so your nervous system is overactive, again, to try and protect you. And this might sound a little woo. And look, I'm an attorney. I know how to be logical. But one of the things I realized is to overcome this, I need to just put everything to the side and just be radically open-minded and being willing
Yes.
to try and learn things.
Yes.
And and trauma can also be in your physical body, and we also have a bioenergetic field. That's how MRIs work. The MRIs are evaluating basically your body's magnetic field. Trauma can even be stored there. And so the trauma release exercises that helps to get the trauma out of your body and your nervous system, the trapped trauma. And that worked really well for me. One word of warning, sometimes it would be helpful to do those exercises with a therapist present because you
Yeah,
might
I
have
was going
stuff.
to say,
Yeah, you might have
because do
stuff
you
that,
get to actually bring the feelings up
yeah, and you have support because
verbally?
sometimes you
Yeah.
might have like you could have potentially an anxiety attack or
Yeah.
just it could be really difficult emotionally. So
Okay.
I'm kind of like a do-it-yourself type person, but I understand that
Hmm.
it could be helpful to have a counselor or a therapist there. Um, and
Did it help you by doing that? I'm just curious. Did it help you then? Because I do, it's 100%. I saw it in my husband's body. Th
mm,
those reactions were visceral, right? It was
yeah.
just coming from deep within. It wasn't rational. And did it help you identify when those were happening, when you were getting those feelings in the moment? Were you able to then identify, oh, I'm getting triggered?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I was, and
Yeah,
and during the exercises, you actually sometimes will have a flash of memories
you will.
as you're releasing. I mean, there were
Yeah.
times where I'd like burst out in tears. I'd like remember like just being yelled at for something minor,
Yeah.
like one of the memories I have from childhood, and look, this happened to me thousands of times, by the way, um, over my entire childhood and adolescence. You know, little kids are stumbly. I would spill a cup, and my dad would just flip out and start screaming at me, be like, "You don't care about anything. You never pay attention." Blah blah blah. And you know, as a young child, you're just like totally thrown off by that. And before I start to do the trauma release work, if I spilled something, I would get
Yes.
that freeze response.
Hmm.
So yeah, I start to tie things together.
Okay.
But anyways, in one of the sessions where I was doing the trauma release exercises or TRE, I had like that memory as I was releasing.
Yeah.
So that's one method. Another method that I would recommend is something called network chiropractic. or network spinal analysis. Network
Ooh.
chiro is kind of like, a modern term, but it's basically pressure point therapy that helps balance your bioenergetic field. It helps, process and release trauma that way. And the way I would describe it, I actually just had a session today. I still do
Really?
network chiro, years later because it's helpful. It's like defragging the hard drive and just bouncing.
Uh-huh.
It also balances your nervous system. And so they touch like pressure points in your spine. And the way I would describe it is afterwards, it feels like a combination of 2 hours of meditation and 2 hours of massage. Like it's that relaxing.
Ooh,
Yeah.
we could
And
all use
so,
that.
yeah, I highly recommend it. And so, some
Oh,
practitioners are better than others, like with
yeah.
anything. And sometimes I was going through a breakup at one time when I was getting a session. I felt like a lot of pain, but that's because it was releasing the emotional pain. Um, but yeah, that was a game changer for me. It was one of the first things I did that gave me like instant relief. And because of that, I doubled down. And that's something I recommend, by the way. It's a process
Something
of
works.
trial and error and iteration, but a big mistake that people make on the healing journey is they'll kind of dabble and they'll go from one thing to another. No, you can't do that. If something helps you, keep doing it. Don't stop and then add to it. Because normally it takes more than one thing. I think one of the keys to
Yeah.
healing is to stack methods. Don't just
Yeah.
do one. So in any event, Network Cairo was working so well for me that for like the first 6 months, I would go 3 times a week.
Really?
And then for years, I would do twice a week. And now, just for maintenance, I do once a week.
Do you
And
think that it helped you get out of constant fight, fight, freeze mode, like constant hyper
oh,
alertness?
definitely. Yeah.
That's
Because,
what, because that's not healthy, man. That's not healthy, people.
yeah, it
Not
gave me relief
healthy.
and
Yeah.
it snowballs over time, the positive effects. I don't have anything to sell. I just want to help people. I just want to speed up time for others. I know it just sucks when you're really traumatized and struggling and just life is hell. And what's that saying? When you don't have your health, you only want one thing. When you're healthy, you want 1,000 things. And to me, emotional health is even more, it's interrelated, but it's even more important than physical health because you could be perfectly physically healthy, but if you're in emotional pain, you're still trapped in hell. And so I want to help people escape from hell and just show them the ways that I found that have helped. That took me years and years to find out to speed up time for other people because I know people are suffering and they're in a lot of emotional pain and it's affecting every other area of their life, including their relationships. And so, I see this as the key to having just a better overall life in health, wealth, and relationships is to deal with the trauma, to process and release it. And then everything is better because, it's cliche, but wherever you go, there you are. You can be in Hawaii, and if you're tied up in knots, it's not going to be a good experience for you. So that is the number one key. And that's why I urge both men and women, but especially men in relationships who have this challenge, you have to put your healing as your top priority above everything else. When you heal, everything else is better. If you're unhealed, if you're racked with trauma and emotionally dysregulated and you can't control yourself, it's going it's going to poison every other area of your life for the rest of your life. My father ended up eating himself to death. There's people, that's the way most men deal with trauma. They drink too much, or they gamble too much, or they eat too much, or they philander. Like none of these things will ever make you feel better. Only doing the work will. You have to face your demons, or your demons will destroy you and everything you care about.
And I will just tag on that you deserve happy, healthy relationships, no matter what happened to you in your past.
That's right. And
Don't
it's
let
not,
your past
be something that keeps you from getting what you deserve.
That's right. And what happened to you is not your fault.
No.
Not your fault. This is not about blame. But once you're an adult, it's your responsibility to deal with it. Because again, if you don't, it's going to wreck your life. It's just a matter of time. My life, I went through one disaster to another. My entire life till I finally decided to go on that hero's journey of healing. And it is a hero's journey because it's challenging, but you need to be the hero of your own story and overcome the dragon of trauma. And you can, but you cannot avoid the journey. You have to be willing to go through it. It's like what Joseph Campbell talks about in his book, The Hero's Journey. I think it's The Myth of a Thousand Faces is the actual book, but it's what the original Star Wars is based on. But you can't avoid that journey. You can't. You got this gift of life. You got to make the most of it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful, and looking forward to talking to you again.
I can't wait. I can't wait for your book, and I'm going to have you back on because this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for telling your story. I know that it's going to help so many people. So thank you for doing the work. I appreciate it. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. What amazing episodes, right? So Carla and Love both reminded us that healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about understanding what's beneath the surface and meeting it with compassion. Okay, so let's wrap up the real deal with my 3 biggest takeaways that I want you to start practicing today. Number 1, learn from the past with compassion. I want you to listen to me. Almost every single survivor I've interviewed shares one thing in common. They didn't realize how much their past was shaping their present until they hit rock bottom or went completely numb. If that's you, I want you to start with curiosity because maybe, just maybe, there's something deeper going on beneath the anger, the withdrawal, or the exhaustion. Pulling out that thorn hurts at first, but it really is the only way to stop the bleeding and finally find peace. I also want you to take away from these interviews that you don't want to bleed on people who didn't hurt you. When we ignore our wounds, they show up anyway, through our tone, our reactions, our silence, or our walls. And it's not because we're bad or broken. It's because unhealed pain always finds a voice. But healing gives you choice. It lets you respond instead of reacting, connect instead of pushing away, and love without fear of spilling old pain into new moments. And number 3, I loved what he said, stack your healing. Don't chase the quick fix. Like Lev said, transformation isn't one big breakthrough. It's a series of small, consistent actions that add up. Healing compounds over time. So pick one thing. Carla gave you 3 things that you could do. One thing you could do for anxiety, depression, and if you're closed off. So pick one thing that calms your body, softens your heart. A walk, a journal entry, drinking that water, a pause before you respond. Do it again tomorrow and the next day, because that's how new patterns are built, one gentle choice at a time. So remember, healing isn't luck, it's a practice. And every time you pause, feel, and choose compassion, you're rewriting your story one moment at a time. If today's episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs hope, and make sure that you are subscribed for more stories, real tools, and real healing right here on Love and Trauma. We'll see you again next week.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.